welcome back to another episode of the Strive 25 podcast. And I've got a third-time guest on with us today, Michael Allen. Thanks so much for being with us today. The first couple have been over Zoom because you lived in Virginia.
Yes. Yep. Out in Virginia there. Actually getting ready to move and head down to Charleston, South Carolina, which was really great because I knew a real estate person who could help me buy a house down there. So we did that and closed on that last week. So thanks again for hooking up with the brokerage and all that.
Absolutely. And to kind of give our listeners, again, a little bit of background, active duty military.
Yep. Active duty Coast Guard.
Coast Guard for 18 years.
Yep. 18 years, 12 enlisted, and then I commissioned back in 17.
Gotcha. From a standpoint of the lifestyle of military, moving is a part of that lifestyle. How many times have you, has the family moved?
It is definitely part of the lifestyle. Pretty much any branch that you're in, you're going to move. See, I'm trying to think. I've been in New York, San Francisco, North Carolina, Florida, back to North Carolina, lived in Virginia that time, though, went back to Florida, lived in Florida, then went to Charleston, then Virginia, and now going to go back to Charleston. So it's got to be, it's like 7, I think.
Yeah,
it's a lot of moves.
And that's something that the average person doesn't experience. And the mindset of home is different.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people are like, you've moved how many times? Like my wife actually just got a job doing 100% remote work for a company that's based up in Ohio. And the majority of her coworkers they're like, you have moved how many times? They just, it's mind blowing to see, pack your entire house up, your entire life, and move it again. So I guess if you do it enough times, you kind of just get used to it. I've just kind of gotten used to it. We were doing like right before we were, coming here to sit and talk, I was getting the cable turned off at my current house to get ready to move. So you figure out what you have to do and you just get it done.
Yeah, you and I were talking about kind of the saving part of it. And you were talking about just your military income. You're kind of in that 25% range.
Yeah. I've finally been able to go into, like, our pay system allows us to set allotments, is what it's called. And that's basically like right out of your paycheck, it automatically just sends it to somewhere, like to whatever bank account you want it to do, or into retirement funding, which the military and generally a lot of the military workers and government employees have access to the TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan. And our pay system, our HR system, makes it very easy to go in there and just automatically set a percentage of your basic pay, bonus pay, deployment pay, hazard pay, whatever the pay is. You can literally set the specific amount percentage-wise that you want to put into there. And I recently went in there and I put 25% on my base pay. I was able to adjust my bills and my income and expenses and make that work to the 25% range. And I've gotten a little bit extra training in the Coast Guard, financial wise. I'm a command financial specialist for the Coast Guard. And that's basically just like an additional collateral job that I do. Took a class with at the Joint Base, and it's basically additional training for budgeting, expenses, investing, things like that, that helps me to work with our junior members or any member really that wants a little bit more insight and training on how to balance your budget and how to invest. We don't provide financial advice. We do not do that. Obviously, we can't say like what you should invest in, but we could say definitely like you should be trying to put some money away.
Yeah.
And I always recommend that like the TSP is a great way for our younger folks to do it, just because the fees are extremely low.
Totally. Yeah. For our listeners out there, I want to definitely kind of dig into the journey, being in the military, how things have gone, how things have changed over time, how your outlook has changed over time, especially with investing in real estate and whatnot. And then why are you here in St. Louis? Why are you coming 1,000 miles away? To come visit me for the podcast?
Yeah, right. No, I wish. Yeah, I'm out here for work, actually. I'm officially on leave today. But come out here for work. It's a remote site that we come out to and just make sure that everything's still working, obviously. And got to spend some extra time out here, take a day of leave, and then I come back, fly back on Saturday. But
Back to Virginia or,
back
or
to
to
Virginia.
okay.
Yeah, back to Virginia. We don't get down to South Carolina until June. We'll be headed down there. But from the very beginning, as a junior member, like I said, I was enlisted, so boot camp, junior enlisted guy, E3, all the way up through. One of the things that I found was interesting one time is when I was in San Francisco for housing, and base pay, my housing allowance, my BAH housing allowance, was more than my basic pay amount. So like the money that they were giving me to find a place to live was more than they were paying me to do my job. So, and then I was paying rent, so that I never got to see any of that money again. That's gone. But that's sort of when I was like looking into getting into like real estate and actually buying a house. And we bought our first property. So it was after San Francisco, went to North Carolina, then went to Florida for the first duty station as an enlisted aviation avionics electrical technician is what it was called. And did that in Florida. And as soon as we left Florida, so we did 4 years in Florida, renting, throwing money away.
Wait, how many years?
4 years in Florida.
Okay. Yep. And at that time, you were 22, 23?
Yep.
Okay.
Very junior. It's not one of those things, like if you can get that early on mindset that you can put money into your own pocket versus someone else's pocket by buying a property instead of renting, even if it's maybe you will only be there for a little while, it's worth it. If you can make the deal work, then I definitely would say that it would be worth it. Because we left Florida and we went into Virginia and we found we got a foreclosure condo. And from there, we were able to do some minor renovations, kitchen, bathroom, and lived in that place for 4 years before heading back down to Florida. And we were able to sell that house or like that, condo for a pretty decent profit. We had some pretty good equity built up in that at that point, which we then took down to go back down to Florida again and completely paid off all outstanding debt. So car payment gone, and obviously weren't paying rent, but any credit cards gone. So we had zero debt again to move down to Florida, and it was really great to be able to do that. And had I not bought a house or bought a property to invest in my own money in something that I own, I mean, obviously the bank owns it and you're paying the mortgage on it, but it's a way to reuse your money on the way out potentially, unless we have another kind of like 08 situation, which hopefully we're not going to see. But that's just kind of the way it is. It's like you can pay rent to someone else or you can pay a mortgage on your own property. And from then on, it was like when we've definitely held on to properties. So like we had leaving Virginia, we went to Florida. We bought a house in Florida. Leaving Florida, we went to Charleston, South Carolina, bought a house there, kept the Florida house. And then leaving Charleston for Virginia, kept the Charleston house. So at one time when we were up here in Virginia, we owned 3 houses at that time. And both were rented out. The Florida house was rented out and Charleston house rented out. And if you can get good tenants and make sure that you have a solid understanding and agreement with them on paper, that's a great way to continue to build that equity and the long run. We ended up selling the house in Florida back in 21, and markets were high, and that was another great opportunity to completely eliminate any new debt that we had accumulated and put a serious kind of emergency savings and nest egg together. In addition to that, that's another part of what helped me free up enough money to be able to put it to a Strat 25 kind of a situation where we no longer had debt. I wasn't paying other things. So I was able to increase my percentage of allotment to my TSP retirement. And additionally, when doing all that, it's like that early, let your money work for you over time. And if you can continue to build your funds, for instance, in going with your brokerage down there for the house in Somerville, what do you got to pay when you do a VA mortgage? Like even a VA is zero down, right? Like still have to pay your closing costs and everything. Because I was able to be doing an outside of TSP investment, which I'm not 100% sure on TSP just because I don't mess with it on that. But a regular Roth IRA that I have on the outside, I had been able to build up enough of my contributed funds that I was able to do a no penalty withdrawal on my IRA to free up cash to pay closing costs and inspections and appraisal and whatever the stuff that is not able to be rolled into the VA. Additionally, I have another house on a VA. So if you have your maximum utilized in your VA loan, you might have to pay that difference down, right, to meet the cap on your VA eligibility. Same kind of thing. Had I necessarily needed to, pay off a chunk there, could have used it for my IRA. Because in moving out of Virginia, we are selling the house in Virginia, but we hadn't sold it yet. So we were like, it was either going to we would be contingent on selling our Virginia house, or were we able to find a property and make it all work that I was able to, like I said, draw money out of my IRA with zero penalty, because we're going to pay it back within 60 days. As long as you put it back within the 60 days, you don't have any penalties. So you're essentially, it's your money. Why not make it work for you? And so that way I'm not having to borrow or take a gift or anything like that on it to make my deals happen, make what I wanted to have happen financially occur of my own accord.
So you've got these different tools that are out there, pulling levers, looking at the different combinations of things and pulling levers to be able to figure out what's the right combination in terms of having the money there, putting money away, investing, how to do the loan. Sorry, guys, that was UPS dropping in there. So there's so much that goes into that journey, right? I want to dig into a couple things. From the very beginning, was there a turning point in terms of a conversation or a book you read or something that said, you know what, this is the time to start to think about buying a house? And you were at what age? 24?
23, at 2022, 23. I don't recall anything specifically that kind of triggered it. It was definitely one of those situations where I'm kind of like watching the markets and I'm watching myself pay rent to someone else that I'm never going to see again. And it just felt right. And the opportunity was right. The markets were right. It was coming out of.
What year was that?
That was 11, 12. So coming off the back end of the 08 kind of market problems. And it was just worth it. What really, really emphasized my being interested in helping other people to make sure that they take the right steps and do things earlier is during the Command Financial Specialist course that I took, it just talked about the power of time and money. And it's the earlier that you start investing anything, that time value of money is going to be exponential sometimes in the way that it can benefit you. And if you start putting away money earlier, as that interest compounds and everything else, that whole pot of money is going to be much, much larger than if you were to try to start saving later and then try to catch up, because there's no way that you're going to be able to catch up after 30 years of investing unless you're winning the lottery. Because you can start small and start putting it away, and that little amount is going to start growing and growing and growing. And not only is just that small amount going to grow, but the interest on that amount is now going to compound and continue to grow.
So at that time, do you remember what rent would have been versus your BAH versus your actual mortgage payment as you kind of went through that process?
So that actually, I think that was honestly one of the things that definitely made me look at it was why am I paying rent when I can own something for less than what I would be paying rent on? And that has gone up and down a little bit. Our purchase of the house in Somerville, we are exceeding my BAH and kind of what a rental payment would necessarily have been at the time. That's mostly driven on interest rates right now, though. We're at a 6 something. We were seeing what's as high as 7 or 8s. And then until that comes way back down, we're going to see your overall mortgage cost and insurance and all that's going to be a little higher until interest rates decide to come back down if it eases up. But for the majority, depending on what you're looking for, what is your living style? What's the max that you would be happy with? For us, in the first time we bought a house in Norfolk, the condo, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom condo, and that was all we really needed. You could pay rent at $1,700, $1,800, or not necessarily that high for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but it was a nice area, really great area. But you could pay well over thousands of dollars, or $1,000, $1,500. Probably would, I'd say for like $1,500 would have been like average rent for a house like that. $12 to $1,500. My mortgage and interest all combined, everything, and my HOA was like $850.
Damn.
Yeah, it just doing the math and doing the difference. Like, a lot of people are very numbers driven when you talk to them about that kind of thing. It's like, you can show them how much your rent's going to be, or you can be like, hey, here's a mortgage payment with insurance and HOA, and you're going to save $400. You tell someone that they're going to save $400. I don't know anyone in the right mind that wouldn't do that. And it was, to me, that was just the right decision. And ever since then, we've been able to make that work. And generally, as a military member, a lot of people, when they move, if they're going to be living on the economy, is what we call it, that you get a BAH payment. Because if you're on base and stuff like that, you don't get BAH and stuff like that. We generally want to try to like remain under your BAH amount. Like, my wife and I, we've always tried to stay under that BAH. Only this year did we go fully into, like, we're over our BAH for the Somerville house, but that's just because she's got a full-time remote job now that we're comfortable doing that with our life situation right now. But definitely, you can find a property out there that fits you as a military member, generally under your BAH, that you can own. Now, the government doesn't pay us BAH to own properties, and it comes with its own, interesting set of circumstances. Like, renting for your situation sometimes works. Like, you pay rent. If you're going to leave soon, probably better to rent a place, not buy. But if you're going to take advantage of markets and looking to the future of owning several properties, having income streams, then the buying side of things just works sometimes. And for us, it has.
That first property in Norfolk, how long were you stationed there?
4 years.
4 years. And so you then went to North Carolina or Northern Virginia?
Florida. So it was Norfolk, and then so it was 4 years Norfolk, then to Florida. And in 4 years, it being a foreclosure sort of helped on building us some equity in there. But even then, it was a decent amount of equity to come out of in 4 years. Unless we hit a major market recession, if you're paying a mortgage, you're paying principal. A portion of that is going to principal. It's building out equity in your loan. Whereas if you're renting, you're not. You're just paying that
somebody else's mortgage.
Someone else's mortgage, generally, yeah. So if life situation works for you, that you're going to be in an area for a few years, potentially we're only going to be in Somerville for 3 years. But what we looked at in the property that we purchased is, it is a very good home in a very nice neighborhood that could easily rent later. So we kind of looked at this purchase as, we wanted a good house in a nice neighborhood that we're going to live in for 3 years. Then will we decide to sell it on the way out, or will we keep it additionally as another rental property? Which, having 2 rental properties in the Charleston area can be very good. Go for a little vacation, go down there, make sure the properties are good, but additionally to have the option of keeping it or selling it. It's just keeping your options open, and whatever your life situation is, that if you can make it work to have a property that you are the owner of, that you're paying a mortgage, you're paying principal on, that money, eventually you could potentially see it again, or see more. If your house appreciates while you own it, you have a very good opportunity to come out much higher than when you went in. Even if interest rates are climbing and things like that, it's, houses are generally probably going to appreciate in the current cycle a little more than you would just with a regular kind of investment as well. Right? Housing and home ownership is a great investment opportunity as well, in addition to saving 25% of your income.
Yeah, and I think I do want to kind of go backwards a little bit and talk about a few more things about buying with intention and basically being a rental down the road, and kind of what that mindset looks like. But the example that I talk about all the time, to try to be able to quantify, real estate leverage. The word leverage is something that kind of has a bad connotation.
It,
Because of the 0 to 8, 09 crash and a lot of leverage and people underwater. But at the same time, if you've got 10 grand and you decide that you're going to put it in the stock market, and let's say you get in one, you get a great return of 10%. Boom, $1,000. Cool.
Yeah.
If you take that 10 grand and decided to and instead of that, buy a home for $300,000, let's just say it's your 3% down payment. And in that first year, the home appreciates an average of just very meager 3% in the first year. That home is $300,000. And that first year of appreciation, that's 300,000 times 0.03. So $9,000 of value or appreciation in that first year. So 9,000 versus the 1,000, which is a massive difference.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely a good point to put out there. So like, yeah, if you can get into a home and qualify, when you sell it, it should be worth more than what you purchased it for, unless you're completely upside down in some house. But a lot of the mortgages now, with the 08 problems and things like that, that caused a lot of those problems are no longer happening because like the qualification process is much more stringent, and it cleans out a lot of those. Essentially they were like bad mortgages.
Yep.
That were issued when they had no business issuing those mortgages. That really, unless we're going to see a complete reversal in the mortgage industry and in the housing industry, it doesn't make sense not to do it to me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because you're right. Like from a data standpoint, we've looked at these charts and we talked to realtors and different clients and presentations about this stuff. That's like you go over the last 100 years, even in all the recessions, every single recession except the 08, 09 recession, home prices either remained stable or went up during the actual recessions. And then the 08, 09, I think is the biggest exception because the housing issue, the mortgage industry was the reason for the recession in the first place. So it's just a different dynamic. And people are not selling their houses. There's no inventory, and that's not going to change unless something else happens.
Well, it was actually very interesting going down to Somerville to try and purchase a house down there. That houses were still going. Like we put in $10,000 over asking for the first house that we found and I fell in love with down there, and we lost it. Someone else went higher, or I think it was just like an all cash offer, which then also is like, who's got $500,000 cash just sitting around to buy a house? So that's good for them. But the market, it has, I would say, for sure slowed down, and people aren't probably making 30 over offers and things like that. But it's not going to, like, there's always going to be more people than there are houses. So it's like, if you can get into a house that fits you, then you absolutely should. And what you're saying with like that mindset of thinking about how you're going to use this house in the future. Our big thing when buying the house, and actually it was probably kind of good that we didn't get that house that we wanted and went 10 over on, is because like that was a big house. There was a lot of house actually thinking about it.
What kind of square footage was that one?
It was like 3,200 or something. And the house that we got in the same neighborhood, we actually went and found another one in the same neighborhood, is 2,100. So 1,000 square feet less, $100,000 less. So look like much smaller house, but the house is a much better fit for us to be there temporarily and then potentially rent it out later on, because that big, huge, awesome house that we were like, oh, this is amazing. It's kind of hard to find a right renter for something like that. If we decided not to sell it on the way out, that probably would be a house that we would sell on the way out. But this other house is one that has more potential to be easily rentable. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms versus like it's a 4-2 versus like 5-3. Like unless you find the right family with kids and all of that, it's much easier to do kind of a more general size house for rentals. I mean, I'm not sure I'm sure you have some rental inventory and things like that. It's like, what's the average house that someone wants to rent? It's probably not a 5-3, massive house, but like a 3-2, 4-2 is probably the like sweet spot range for someone that's wanting to rent a house. Because otherwise it's like, if you get anything smaller than that, you could go do like a condo or an apartment. But getting into that specific type of housing that someone would be looking for definitely makes sense, and it should definitely influence your decision on a property. So unless you're going to be going into somewhere that you know that you're going to be looking for that house that's going to be yours for 7-something years, that you can look at it on the way out, definitely selling it. It's like maybe you would want to get something that you could add to your inventory and have as a rental property.
I love that you bring that up because, you know, the formula of the real estate game, right? Not everybody wants to do it. Not everybody wants to be able to be a landlord or deal with the risks that are involved. But if you do want to go down that path, there's a certain formula that you can, enact, and finding a property that's the right fit, like you mentioned, it's pure supply and demand curves. Like if it's too big of a property, not enough people are going to be able to afford it. If it's too small, too many people can afford it, or you're going to get the wrong type of clientele or renters. So you got to find that sweet spot, and every area is going to be different. That first property in Norfolk, did you have that same kind of mindset, or part of that mindset of buying intentionally that, hey, it could be rented or just kind of luck?
So we did, and the only reason that we actually didn't keep it is, and viewers should look out for, the listeners should look out for these sorts of things, is when you get too involved in the HOA or the property management company, it could be not detrimental, but you have to weigh that of like, will this property continue to be managed well? I ended up being the treasurer and the president of that HOA. So
At like 25?
yes. But it was because I was very much about like, hey, we need to do some things. We got like common spaces completely renovated, got new like flashing outside of the roof that needed to be done, right sized the budget and everything else. But in leaving, I was looking at this like, are they going to continue to maintain this place to the level that I had to be attentive on making sure that the accounts are getting paid, that everything is going well? And I'm glad that I actually sold our unit and took that equity, because it was funny, because about 3 months later, I actually got a phone call from the bank that said that they had overdrafted or failed to pay their community loan. I had gotten a community association loan to make these renovations and build a surplus and savings and contingency fund. And they had missed the first payment after I had left. So it was like, probably was a good thing that I had decided not to. But had it had a proper, other management company running it, it could very well have been a great opportunity to continue and have, an additional property rental income in Norfolk.
So upon selling in Norfolk, what was the process in terms of getting into the next home and buying? And did you use a VA loan on the next one?
So we did, actually. So we went from Florida, or from Norfolk down to Florida, into a really nice area down there, Dunedin, Florida. So really pretty, small town, growing significantly now, which was good for us. But what we actually did down there is we went and did a rental agreement. We found a house, and they were not exactly ready to sell, but we really liked the area, and we were like, just with being a military move, it was kind of like, well, we had to go and we have to find something quick. So it was kind of like, go in there. We signed a rent with the option to buy if they decided to sell. I mean, we told them that we were going to be a short-term renter at that point. If they're not going to offer, if they're fully committed to selling the house, we'll be short-term, and we're going to, live here for a month or two while we figure out where we're going to buy a house. By the end of the 2 months that we were there, they were like, we're going to sell the house. We'll give you first option. And they rolled in the mortgage payment, or the rent payments that we had paid on top of the price. So they actually reduced the price for us as, the current owners or the current tenants. And we definitely jumped on that and bought and lived there for a couple of years, which actually was right when I got picked up to go to officer candidate school. So we were actually only there for like 2.5 years before going to Charleston, South Carolina. So it was like, in a matter of just a few years, I actually bought 3-4 houses. It's been interesting with my wife and I looking back. It was like, wow, we bought a bunch of houses real quick. Right now, because we closed on the Somerville house and we still have a house in West Ashley and Charleston, and we still have currently the Virginia house. It's like we have 3 houses right now again. So, and
Yep.
you know, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. So going through that process, having multiple VA loans, you mentioned this earlier.
Mhm.
If you fit into the VA entitlement requirements, it's possible to have more than one VA loan. And I bring it up because a lot of people don't realize that. Don't
Yeah.
realize that it's possible. And so when you went from Florida there for a couple of years, go to Charleston.
Yep, we went to Charleston, and then we bought a house in Charleston with VA. And I remember working with you, I think, to do that.
To refinance that
to
one.
refinance that
Later.
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was basically that we had to meet. No, I'm sorry, it was a different brokerage at the time.
Yeah.
But in order to fit in on, like, we still had our Florida house as VA, and we were buying in West Ashley, Charleston area, that the loan we had to come out of pocket to meet the like difference essentially. But like we were able to have 2 VA entitlements like being utilized, but we did have to come out of pocket on a certain portion to be able to do that and to meet that. And one of those things that actually also enabled us to do that is talking to other people that do, you know, various things in financial areas and banks and things like that. Is like certain banks, and there's a large credit union that a lot of military banks with, and then there's a large bank that was a former insurance company that the military a lot of banks with, and both of those, I believe, offer, it's like a commissioning or career incentive or a career loan plan where you can get almost like $30,000 for like 1% or something, and 30K at 1% is a pretty decent interest rate on something to be able to allow you to get into other things. So that product allowed us to get into another VA loan by cutting the difference down that we needed to pay. And then we were able to pay that off again with the sale of the other property. So it's kind of looking at what the products that are available out there to you to make sure that you can get it to work for you.
So you're in South Carolina, you've got the Florida rental.
Yep.
At that point in time, that Florida condo, right? What was your payment level again at that time?
So we had the Florida
900.
house was a 3-2 single family home.
Oh, okay.
And again, great rental criteria. And mortgage was $1,400 on that house
Okay.
total.
And what did
and
you
our
rent it for?
rent was we had it at $1,700
$1,700.
for a guy. And it was another military guy that, just with the way everything was working with my timing for leaving, they were looking for a house and they were able to come in, and that was great. So they fit perfectly, which anybody that's ever rented from the military or like is a military members are really great to have as renters generally. I mean, I'm sure there are outliers out there that people have, some people are not good, but a military member is generally someone that's kind of probably take care of your property. Like, and if not, well, then the command can also talk to them about why they're not being a good tenant. And because part of those things is like you have to be financially, not necessarily like responsible. You have financial responsibility in the military is a big thing. If you're not financially responsible in the military and you rack up huge amounts of credit card debt, you default on things, if you piss off landlords and stuff like that, it's like that sort of thing. Once it hits your permanent record of like someone puts a lien on you or, you know, takes you to court or whatever, that can affect security clearances, which affects your employment in the military. Right. So it's like generally a military member is probably going to be a pretty decent renter.
Yep.
So got lucky with that. Actually, 2 of the people that I've rented to have been military.
What base were you stationed at in Florida?
In Florida, that was at the air station, the Coast Guard Air Station at Clearwater.
In Clearwater. Okay. So I'm talking about, again, supply and demand. You know, when you're stationed at a base, you're going to have typically a higher demand for rent, more people coming and going, and then obviously military coming and going, and supply of people that could be good renters. And so I I bring it up because owning a home is obviously a risk, right? Home values can go up and they can go down in short periods of time, but over the long term, values typically go up. And having a renter coming and going and damaging a property and having to cover payments if you can't find a renter, that's obviously a risk.
Yep.
But if you can minimize some of that risk, then
Absolutely. You don't want to necessarily buy a house in a not heavily transited area necessarily, like unless that's your forever home. How many renters are going to be potentially going through there? Like, it's like, unless you're going to like the wherever the next new thing is coming to be built up, and you're going to have a huge economy moving into there, you might not have a great opportunity with finding renters for something like that. But in a heavy military area or a heavy populated area, you're going to have people coming and going all the time, and you're going to have potential renters, potential tenants in and out all the time. And it's balancing that risk of, someone could do damage to your place. And that's why it's good to have proper insurance on your home as a tenant, as a landlord. There's there are different rents and, not rents, but insurance. There are different levels of insurance you can have. As a landlord, you can have different insurance that covers your building, your property. Whereas the tenant's supposed to have their own insurance that covers their own property inside of your building. So, you definitely want to have your property that you're going to select to be a rental or be a temporary home for yourself and then be a rental, to be in an area that's going to have potential tenants. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a home that's not going to rent. So
that first renter, obviously, I guess the renter just came about through connections, or did you advertise it online? Or
we advertised it online, and then as well that I had a friend that was still working there at the base, and he was like, "Oh, hey, this guy, he's going to be. I know he's looking to move somewhere. Would his house work for you? Would your house work for him?" I said, "Hey, maybe. Here's the information. Here's the listing details. Give it to them and let's see what we see." And they were very happy with it, and we came to an agreement, and it was an average market agreement. Obviously people can incentivize things in different ways, whether that's through doing a lower security deposit for someone with a certain credit level, or a military member, things like that. Whatever deal you work out is, should be reasonable, but average market rent, it was great.
Where did you pull the lease contract?
I believe that was just a general Florida residential lease contract. I actually, for the house that we have rented in Charleston right now, I used Zillow. I think I used just a generic South Carolina residential lease agreement. And you go through there with a PDF editor, and you just, edit the fields that you need to edit, strike the things you need to strike, and go in. And for my certain situation, we were able to upload that to Zillow and e-sign and countersign with the tenant together. So we were 100% online, did it virtually. And then when they've been in there for 4 years now, almost, that we were able to change when they wanted to go to a month-to-month situation. Same thing. We just pulled the old contract back up and changed the details to they're going to convert to a month-to-month, and we just re-signed, which is great.
So the Virginia property that you just are departing, that purchase, going back in time. So you've got Florida, you've got South Carolina property, and then you're moving to Virginia Beach or to Norfolk area.
Yep.
What was the process? What were the things going on in that time, trying to navigate all the loans, where you're going to go, where are you going to buy or not? What was going on in that time?
Again, it was looking at what kind of a house we wanted, and that was during COVID, right? So we were. It was it was in 20. We were looking at coming up to Virginia, and found a house on MLS. My wife found it, and we were able to get in touch with the agent, and they had some interest, but no full offers yet. Pardon me. And it was actually a house it's a bigger house than it is not a house that I would rent. And that's actually why we are selling the house right now. Is it's a 1912 brick and stucco, 3-story, 5-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. Well, technically 3. It's full 5-3, and beautiful old hardwoods and sliding pocket doors. Just a whole lot of details and things that like a renter's not going to care about or necessarily be looking for. But also, it's like, would you want a renter in that kind of a house? Probably not. Like, while they're not necessarily going to destroy it, they're probably also not going to just take care of it in the way that you would want someone to take care of a nice house like that. So while we came up to Virginia thinking we may stay in that house the next 7 years, like if I get retoured in this area again, we would just stay in this house. And that was how it was. And when it came down to like getting our picks and our list of where we're going next, we ended up going back down to South Carolina. So we're not staying in Virginia. So now it's like, oh, okay, now we got to sell the house. So it was that consideration of like, are we going to rent the house or are we going to sell the house? With my criteria for like having a house that's going to be rented, this was not a house that was going to be rented. It was, all right, time to pull the equity and go. And so we got, found our agent that we've had for a long time, which is having a good, agent, seller, buyer relationship has been great. Having an agent we've known for like 10 years in Virginia that we've done 3 different deals. Like he was our agent when we bought that first condo. He was our agent when we sold that condo. We've just known him for a long time, being able to have those deals. And we're actually under contract right now with the house in Virginia, and we will be, as long as everything goes right, we've had all the things corrected that needed to be corrected and all the stuff. And we're going to close the sale on that on the 9th. It has worked out, but it's definitely one of those that like your lifestyle or your life situation may change. Whereas I thought we may have been staying there until I retire. It's not the case anymore. So now we have to change, which just means that it doesn't become a rental. We sell it, take the equity, go elsewhere.
So I'm trying to remember, it's been a couple of years now, that Virginia purchase, because we did the refinance on the Florida property. Or was the South Carolina property?
That was a Florida house that we went from. It was a VA. We went to a conventional. And then it was because I had the West Ashley house in Charleston was a VA. I wasn't sure if we had refinanced that to a conventional either. We hadn't. So that's why we like bumped up against the max again for the VA cap for going to the Somerville. But like I said, it works though, because now we have like 2 homes that are more rentable in that area. And then I think we also did the current house, the Virginia house, we also converted to a conventional, I'm pretty sure, as well.
Yeah, I'm blanking.
When it was with the Flagstar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, because I definitely want to kind of just talk through briefly the VA limits for the public out there, because there may be some military people that don't know anything about this. I think it's important just to talk through the logic, because on the South Carolina property that you just purchased, the purchase price is what again?
400.
400
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah.
Okay. The VA home, the VA loan on your Virginia property, trying to think what that original purchase price was.
317, 318, somewhere around there.
Okay. So when you talk about, the loan limits right now are 729. So bottom line,
that's a lot of house.
I mean, if you have more than one, if you add up both loans, 300 and a 400 or 300 and 320 and 429, like if they both add up to the loan limit or below, you can get into the next house potentially with a 0 down payment.
Right. You just got to pay closing costs.
You got to pay closing costs. And that's the backwards way to get you as a ballpark. There's more that goes into the actual fund numbers, and they can be different.
Right.
But that's one of the powerful things, kind of going in a different lane, about people that are purchasing in the Northern Virginia and DC market, is that the loan limits up there are like 1.086. And so I have a couple of clients that have 2 homes outstanding, and now they're buying another one up there, and they can fit into the requirements because of that. It's a high cost area. But again, these are all just little bitty different nuances, knowing how to work a VA loan, knowing how to refinance out of a VA loan, knowing
Yeah.
where to be able to find, what type of property, what mix, what type of back-end renter do you want to be able to focus on. All goes into the equation to really kind of navigate this stuff and come out the other side, having, good investments and also minimizing risk.
Yeah.
Along the way, you get the lending side of things, you have the realtor side of things. Are there any other tools or resources that you relied on to be able to kind of give you extra input?
I would say not specific tools, but just the relationships with people and talking to other people that are out there that have maybe done it before. Talking with Miguel previously, that was our mutual friend before, that they had done various things, and finding a lender that knows what they're talking about too is great. Like the whole experience that we've had for the last several years of buying and selling stuff, it's been great working with Fairway to do those things. And it's because I'd say that like your business knows what they're doing. That makes it a lot easier to do a deal with any company. It's just like when they're like, nope, we can perfectly explain all of these details in a way that makes sense to the buyer or the seller. Like that's so much better. So I would definitely say that it's talking to people that have maybe come before you and done this before, because they're going to tell you what has worked, and then they're probably also going to tell you what has not worked as well, and gone in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. Relationships and asking questions to people that have been there before, because I've come across people that are scared to or don't want to bother somebody, and it's like you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah,
you won't know. You can't get a no if you don't ask. And that kind of brings me back to the work that you're doing with some of the younger crowd with a financial. Say it again. What's the?
So there were two things that I've done in that kind of a realm, and that was being a command financial specialist, which is just like a certified position that gets additional training on budgeting and investment methods and things like that. Obviously, no specific product recommendations, but it's basically just kind of getting with a junior member that usually junior members, just like if you've been in the military for a long time, it's like hopefully as an adult you've just kind of like picked this up, but sometimes not. And if you're a very junior, like enlisted person that you can enlist at 17 and then go to boot camp, and then like at 18 you go off to your unit when you graduate high school. But I mean, like, is high school teaching people necessarily like the way to budget and pay taxes and buy property and things like no, they're not. So they have to pick that up from somewhere else, generally, is how that happens. And so it's working with junior folks on budgets. Like, are they looking at we call it in the Coast Guard, we call it an LES, a leave and earning statements. Like, are they looking at their money in? And then are they looking at their expenses? And are they like, is their money in even with or above their expenses? Because if their expenses are above their money in, they're leveraging credit cards or whatever they're doing. So they're going to be paying additional interest on their money, and potentially putting themselves into a risk situation where if they don't manage that and learn to control it and to be, at least even or having an income surplus, could affect their security clearance, right? So, and ultimately their employment. So that's the CFS side of things, command financial specialist, of just helping kids make budgets and learn to do that sort of thing. But then, and then is there anything that you had on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of curious, as you've been doing this over time, what's the average person in that position? Are they receptive to putting action into some of the things and making changes or slight changes, or
Generally,
or are they doing things and saving money and then maybe even investing? Like, what's
so it really all depends on people, where they come from and their background. Like, if money is not a thing, if money is taboo in their family or whatever, and they've not had good financial coaching or upbringing, then it can perpetuate. So it's really, a lot of time you'll get somebody that is either interested in it and like comes to me and says, hey, I wanted to ask you about this sort of thing, when they find out that I do command financial specialist stuff. Or we could have inverse situations where it's like something has happened and they are being told to come and talk to me, either by like a supervisor or something like that. And it has its own levels of formality of like, hey, just go sit with this person and try and make a budget. Or it's like, bring me your bank statements, your pay, all your stuff, and we're going to sit down because you're in a situation that we need to correct, or you may not be able to be employed by the military anymore. So there's a wide range of it there. And generally I like to do it in a way that is, I'm not trying to like make them feel bad about the situation that they are in. It's like, that's the situation that they're in, and they got there. How do we fix it? How do we get them to be able to look at, okay, well, you're spending way too much because you're just like going to restaurants constantly. You're going out and drinking at the bar tabs. You are way high, and like your income is only this. Like, unless your income is covering all of that, like I said, you're using credit cards and building debt and all these other things that can put them into a situation that's not good. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, you have other options. Like, you don't have to continuously go out to eat. And if you do, like, if you literally don't have any option, like your living circumstances are like, you don't have a kitchen, whatever. It's like, why are you in that situation as well? So it's kind of like peeling back the layers of like what has them in this situation, and then to help them get out of it. Whether that's, like I said, a lot of them have never made a formal budget. Like, all they know is that the card swipes and it doesn't decline, so that's bad. Like, so it's doing that, or even just taking and walking them through their LES, their leave and earnings statement. It's like, this is what it means. I had a member that started getting paid more, and that's a red flag to me. It's like, what do you mean you started getting paid more? And they were like, yeah, I just started getting more in my paycheck. And I was like, there are only two reasons necessarily that like you should get more in your paycheck. And it was just like, you had a travel claim or you met some kind of a raise point, which is like, there's like on a scale, there's like every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8, whatever, or like an annual increase, an annual raise occasionally comes out, but the government sets it and all that. But they just all of a sudden started getting paid more. I was like, what? No, come on. And they brought me their LES, and it turned out that they had failed to submit a travel claim for their move, for their PCS move. And that seems crazy to most people. Like, sure, crazy. Like, why would you not submit a travel claim? But obviously I had a member that didn't, and so it's not like, okay, well, you didn't submit the travel claim. That's over. That has happened. Now we need to fix it. So I was working with that member to work with the admin department to get the proper travel claim submitted and get this right. Because what happened is they didn't submit the travel claim. They had been advanced money to move. And then the government was like, you've moved. You didn't submit a travel claim, and you have to submit a travel claim to get this money. So they were clawing back the money from her pay, basically, over a certain period of time. And so that ended up basically being that we got that fixed, and we got the proper travel claim filed. We got the money thing figured out, and they were all good to go. So it's just kind of like helping them to understand some of these things as well. Beyond that, I don't know what they do with it. Like, it is their money, at that point. So it's if you go do whatever you're going to do with it after that, I'm happy that I was able to help them to at least figure that out. And that's the command financial specialist side of things that I've been doing. And then the other side of things is the volunteer income tax assistance stuff. So it's volunteer tax preparation that we can get into in a little more. As well.
Yeah, just before that, from a standpoint of looking at your journey and kind of the peers around you. And, I look at real estate as an opportunity to be able to build wealth, and I can go on hours and talk about it. And when you're going about this kind of inherent journey of relocating and potentially purchasing a property that could then also have its inherent pool of renters, if you do it in the right way, over time, you can set things up to be able to have equity built up, have, a couple pieces of passive income in place. Is that something that you see as the norm? Is it an outlier? Is it an average road? What do you think is how does that look compared to your peers in terms of people that are in your point in 18 years in?
At this level, I mean, I've been in, like I said, 18 years, so it's a long time. At this level, generally people own 1 or 2 houses. They've got a renter or tenant somewhere. I think it's maybe just that it just happens because of the moves. You're just like, well, we have a house and we can't find a person to buy it, so I guess we're going to rent it. And they kind of get like forced into that landlord lifestyle. And then maybe they're like, "Ooh, this is actually working." Building some passive income and deciding to potentially expand their portfolio. But a lot of the junior folks, not necessarily, and that's just because they're in a different stage in life. They're focused on different things. Or you run into some that are very focused on it and very much understanding that having passive income and different revenue streams and diversifying your investments is a very good thing to have. And so those folks are way ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff sometimes. So like my CFS, like part of my job is like I'll meet someone that they're like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about budget." I was like, "Do you have one?" They're like, "Oh yeah," and here it is. And I'm like, that's great. You're already way ahead on this. And like, are you investing in TSP? Oh yep, got that done. And then they're also doing like an IRA. Like I do TSP, I do an IRA on the outside, and I have like various mutual funds that I also invest in. So it's like diversifying all that. So I run into people that are doing all of these things as well. And then I run into people that are just completely oblivious to it. And that's kind of my role in getting them to be a little more aware of it. For instance, TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, the military has 2 retirement things going concurrently right now. We have a lot of older folks and my level or my time in service level where we're on what's called like the old retirement system, the grandfathered retirement system, where it's basically like you do your 20 years, you retire, you can get 50% of your pay as your pension. There's no investment incentive on that. There's no guidance really on anything other than that. It's like 20 years, retirement, pension. The new system that is out there is called the blended retirement system that a lot of the more junior folks they're automatically put into it. There was a period of time where you could go either way. You could opt in to either. And the new system now is, I believe, you do 20 years and you get a reduced pension I don't know what the specific percentage of it is, but because it's reduced, they're also giving the opportunity of investment matching. So the government will match for the people in this certain retirement system up to 5% of what they put in. So like as long as you are putting 5% of your money into the TSP, the government's giving you 5% into the TSP. You are making 100% on your money. Not to mention whatever that does in the future for appreciation and depending on how markets go. So I run into folks that are junior members that are on the blended retirement system that are not doing anything in that. And then I'm like, oh my God, why? And so I kind of elaborate about the blended retirement system on like what their options are. It's a very simple. You go into our human resources system and you just push a number, and like as long as you're doing 5%, you're doubling your money. And anyone that like when I explain it to them like that, they're like, it's pretty easy to understand that if all I have to do is contribute a certain amount and I'm going to get a match, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Most people are like, they can see the value in that.
Yeah.
You can go beyond that, but it doesn't have any like specific gain other than I do it just because of the fees for the TSP. Like TSP's max is almost $20,000, I think. Right? It's
Something
up
like
there.
Yeah.
Whereas like a regular IRA, like a Roth IRA max, I think this year is $6,500. I know it just went up from last year, but so like you're capped there. So like if you want to invest more, TSP is a good option for the people that are doing that, but as well as the management fees are like pennies on the dollar compared to like a private management firm.
The BAH part of it, let's just say you take very simple numbers, 2,000 and 2,000. Probably not accurate, but just to make it very simple. So if I take that 2,000 and 2,000, that's a total of 4,000. Are they taking the 5% based off of?
So the 5% would only be of base pay. BAH is not considered pay in the traditional sense. Like it's not included in our W-2 because it is meant as an allowance for housing. So like BAS, BAH, those are non-taxed items that military members receive as a benefit. And that's why a lot of time people are like, well, it's not necessarily enough to cover everything. Well, it's meant to cover your housing. It's meant to cover your apartment, your condo, whatever your level of living is. If people decide to make it work for their lifestyle and buy a property with it, that's up to them. But the investment side of like the TSP and the government system is only based on like basic pay or bonus money. Like if like people are overseas or they get like a separation pay, I think they can do that. It's basically like only pay items can have that contribution.
Okay, that makes sense. So the 5% is only on the base pay. And then when you put into it, let's say you get to 20 years, then you get your actual pension retirement from the government.
Yep. But reduced.
Reduced to 50%. But the TSP is still on their typical TSP guideline where you can't pull all the money out tax-free until you're 60, 59 and a half.
59 and a half. Yeah. So retirement age. And then, so one of the things that I've done in doing the like tax prep stuff, one of those items that I see a lot of the time is people on the older system, if they were contributing to TSP, I believe they have remedied this now, but it's not an issue. The TSP has various funds that they actually put your money into. They have the G fund, which is like safe government, like securities, bonds, but it's like 3% is, I mean, what was inflation last year? Like
something like that.
8%, 7-8%, something like like you're not even keeping up with inflation. Yeah. Like you are losing money by being in the G fund. And I was finding people that were in the G fund. Like we had a person did 20 something years in the military and then retired. And I'm like looking at their 1099-R here from TSP and it was not a lot of money after a 20-year career of contributing. And I was like, why is this? I mean, you should have well over $100,000 in here, like easy. And I asked them about it and they were in the G fund. They didn't know any better. They didn't know better to change it out of the G fund, which is for anybody that has a TSP, if you're listening, that it's very simple to do. You go to tsp.gov and get into your account and you can change your allocation. And that's it. It's very easy to do. You can do an interfund transfer for like, if you're in one fund and you can go to another fund, you can do that, but you can set your allocation. And that's what determines like when every monthly payment goes in there, which account it goes into. And I always tell people that I recommend, unless they want to actively manage their money, like actively go in there and try to play the markets and like the CNS funds and I funds, to just put to a life cycle fund, which is essentially that retirement age that you're aiming for of like 59 and a half. They automatically use all of the funds to try and maximize your money. It's more risky when you're younger. And then as you're nearing 59 and a half, it's probably got most of your money automatically moved back to the G fund.
Safe stuff.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm 24. I've been in the military for 6 years and I decided I'm going to go buy a house. Let's just say it's a townhouse in Virginia Beach area, which probably maybe 300,000, 200,000. What do you think?
Yeah. For like a townhouse, like connected townhouse. Yeah, probably somewhere else. Yeah. A couple of neighborhoods you can go in there.
So my BAH as a, non-married, no dependents, my BAH would probably be what, 1,800?
No, it'll be less than that. Yeah, but you can go online and look it up by the zip code and that'll tell you what it is.
1,500, 1,400?
Maybe somewhere around there.
So let's say my payment is $1,600.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say it's a 3-bed, 2-bath house. Or let's just say it's 2-bed, 1-bath, and I got a basement.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a room down there. So it's still a 2-1, but I have a basement. I have 2 roommates.
Yep.
Who are paying $500 a month or
Mhm.
whatever combination you want to include.
Mhm.
So let's say that those two people are also military,
Mhm.
and if they're renting out there for $500 a month, and their BH is $1,500, does that work? Can they do that?
They can do that. Yeah. Yeah. As
Okay.
long as they've been released from housing to be on the economy, you could have, and people do that. Like you'll have a military member that buys a 3-bedroom house and rents it out with 2 other people. Like they get the main suite, and the 2 other people take the other 2 bedrooms, and they're paying, those people are probably almost completely covering your mortgage at that point. I mean, you just have to deal with roommates.
Deal with roommates.
Yeah.
Or just have a lot of fun.
Or have a lot,
Playing video games and not spending money at bars.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Something along those lines.
That too. But there's definitely, everybody's life situation differs, and owning a home can fit into that in almost any way.
So the reason I bring that up is because, I've been in the mortgage industry for too long now, and the planning part of it, I can't tell you how many times I've come across somebody's profile and I pull credit and they want to purchase a home for whatever reason. It's like, well, shoot. Like, if we could have been working on a plan 12 months ago, we could have got your scores up, help you put together a savings plan and get you ready to go. And so the planning part, I think, is just so important. And if you're 22, you're in a certain risk profile where you can deal with roommates. You can deal with risk. Maybe if you buy a house and values go down for 5 years, and maybe you hold it for the long term, when you're younger, you can deal with some of those risks.
Mm-hmm.
But to be ready to buy a house at 22, when you have all this time on your side, you have to be planning for it when you're 18, 19, or 20.
Absolutely. And not a lot of people do. And that's where I run into those ones that are like not putting a budget together, not saving money, spending credit cards, spending money they don't have essentially, and not saving and not putting anything away. I mean, it's wild to see and to meet people, or to see the numbers of people that don't have any savings, and to be able to buy a substantial piece of property or a home. A house is, you either have to have access to a VA loan, which then you still have to pay the closing costs on, which means you have to have some money to come to the table with in some way, unless you do a different various ways that we've talked about previously on how that you can make it work, figure out a way to make it work.
Yep.
But then you're obviously going to pay more on the loan, and things have to actually appraise and all those sorts of things. But it's, you have to plan ahead. And as a very junior person, when I first joined the military, I did not exactly think that way. In that, like I didn't go out and like completely blow money and get like in trouble. But I had a moment where I overspent a card, and had those times where it was like, that was a lesson learned, because had I just done that and then gone to try and buy a house, I wouldn't have been able to. Like, I was not in a house buying mode. I was like very junior, brand new, and that was where it was. It's like, you hear a lot about people, like they're renting an apartment and buying $45,000, $50,000 car at like 23% interest rate. You're like, no, like, no, and we say that because it's like, because people do that. And then it's like, you have just, you're going to be upside down in a car that's not going to be worth that much, when you could have gotten a more reasonable car for a while and put money away to buy a house. It's going to appreciate even more, and then potentially give you a, passive income stream if you decided to rent it out later. It's everyone's life situation is different, and it's getting with people that can help to figure out what you need to do and make a plan. And that make a plan thing is very, very important. It's like, generally, for the average person, you don't just like, I'm going to buy a house. Boom, here's cash. No, it's like, you have a mortgage company, you come up with a plan, there's inspections, there's a process that you go through for this kind of a thing to make it happen. And a good portion of that is coming up with a plan, making sure that you have that money set aside, so that you've repaired your credit if necessary, to be able to do those sorts of things, which sounds like that's what you can kind of do with someone if they come to you early enough to be like, hey, we want to buy a house. What's your timeline? Well, 2 months. You don't have a lot of time to work with there, but if your timeline's like 12 to 18 months, like you can repair credit, you can get some money set aside for a down payment. You can at least, for a VA person, you can at least have the closing costs probably put away. Like those sorts of things. It all depends on getting with someone to kind of guide them through the steps that they're going to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a realtor here in St. Louis, and she's really young, 21 years old, and already doing really well selling houses. And when she told me her age, my jaw just dropped, because she's out there selling very nice houses that are pretty pricey, and also working with a lot of investors and speaking this investor lingo that most agents can't speak alone, let alone when you're 21. And that got me excited, because it's like seeing that potential, that power of time and compounding, when she gets into there, because she hasn't purchased a home yet for herself, but she's going to, and she already knows the game, and she's going to be able to have a lot of time on her side. And like that person who's 22 or 18 or 19 that you may come across in your position, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much resources out there. I'm assuming there's probably not enough resources or content or assistance or guidance.
There's not really. I mean, they're getting better at it for the military in general. Like there's a lot of like family support offices. I know that our base, like our Coast Guard base, has like an actual financial specialist, like a certified financial specialist. That's that's his job. He's a civilian employee, and all he does is money seminars and planning, life planning, and all that stuff to get it out there. And it's so other than that, a lot of it is kind of left on the member to try and kind of be interested in finding out for themselves.
Right.
And I mean, there's obviously so much information out there. There's all these wealth plans and everything else. God, there's so much, but that as long as it's not like just go buy gold, like you don't, that's not always the best thing to do, but like there's all this opportunity out there to show people in different ways that they can take advantage of things. And I don't say take advantage of things as in like you're going to, pull one over on someone, but like to utilize what's available to you out there to buy a house, use the VA entitlement. That's one of those great things that is offered to our military members for serving the country versus, if you're going out, completely blind and alone, it's like, good luck, we got to have someone to guide them through. And then even with the retirement and investment stuff, there's a TAPS program. It's for people that are retiring as they leave the government and government service. And it's kind of like, how do you utilize the VA loan? How do you find employment? How do you do retirement money? Various things like that. That was one of the items that I discovered or like kind of uncovered while doing the VITA like tax prep stuff for military members and veterans and retirees, is that it's not necessarily clear to a lot of people that like when you are in the military and you retire, you get a pension, but a lot of folks will also end up getting like a VA rating, which is like a disability rating based on the government like criteria. And like that rating is like 0 to 100% across the board. The amount of money that people get, whether you're like an enlisted E5 to an 04, officer, if you're, enlisted guy, 30%, officer, 30%, that doesn't mean you get 30% of what your pay was. That means like it's a set number. That's it. That's your benefit. One of the things that we found is maybe that's causing confusion with some people about like they go into like say their VA rating is 100%, which is some people, they get up there if they've had exposure issues or back problems or health problems, whatever in the military, you can get to 100% relatively reasonably. And I don't know if that's maybe people are like, oh, I'm at 100%. I don't have to pay taxes on my retirement. No, that's completely wrong. Your military pension is taxable at the federal level. Individually, some states will be different. Like North Carolina, for instance, does not have a income tax on military retirement income for the state of North Carolina. So actually, like Virginia is losing a lot of people across the border to North Carolina. Like they'll work in Virginia, live in North Carolina,
𝐻𝐿 County,
places, because North Carolina doesn't charge an income tax on that military retirement. Virginia actually just got smart recently, and they passed that they're going to exempt, I believe it's up to $40,000 of military retirement income, which for the average military retiree, $40,000 is like that. That's
a big chunk.
It's almost their entire, or it is their entire military income, unless you're in the higher up, like much higher up officers and senior enlisted folks.
Yeah.
So, but we had folks that were not withholding any money in their retirement. And then tax season comes around, and I saw more than one person that owed over $10,000 at like when time comes due to pay your taxes because they didn't withhold.
Yeah.
And the government doesn't care where that withholding money comes from on your W-2 or whether you go, hold more. But it was painful to have to tell them, like, and I show them too. It's like right here on your W-2, block one's your pay, and then block like 3 or 4 over here. That's your federal withholding, and there's nothing there. and it's like, it's painful to see it dawns on them that like something happened. They didn't understand, or they misunderstood what it is that those things come across as. And so that's why I love to do this command financial specialist stuff, the VITA tax prep stuff, to help people to have a greater understanding. And I mean, assume as a mortgage officer that it's helping people to understand the process and what's available to them and how they can make something happen and make something work.
Yeah, and talking about the resources, and you mentioned something about potentially delivering the message maybe in a different way, because everyone's going to receive information in a different way, and maybe that person will never be ready to receive the information, or maybe it's just a different way or a different timing to be able to have an impact. And I kind of liken it to social media, right? Like certain people, have this massive following on social media, and some people just don't, right? And there's probably a couple reasons in that. One, your content sucks.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying mine doesn't suck, but I know it sucks less than day one. 2, like time, longevity, just doing it over and over and over and over, and maybe tweaking things along the way. Like the people that are successful are the ones that just keep doing it. And like, I use this a lot because for me, it just hit me hard. Like Mr. Beast, like one of the best YouTubers in the world, got offered $1 billion for a show. Took him 7 years before he ever had more than 1,000 views. 7 years of just putting content out there because he loved the process. And I bring that because it's like, whatever the situation is, if we're talking about, say, military, and then getting certain resources of information about wealth building or all the different things that go into it, right? Like, doing it in a different way, doing more of it over and over and over, doing it in a creative way, it just takes more. Unfortunately, it takes more and more of it. And you can apply that in any industry, anything. Like if you want to be able to deliver a message, it's going to have to take more of this, more of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely takes more. I'm familiar with Mr. Beast. I've definitely seen his videos. I mean, it's like, yeah. Do you think he went out and bought a car dealership and gave cars away on day one, or like bought an entire grocery store and donated it on day one? No, it takes time to like build up to those events that are very successful and wildly successfully viewed events on his channel. I mean, but he was the #1 streamer on YouTube or something, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Like #1 grossing income or whatever it is. Like his stats are that he didn't get there overnight. It takes time and investment and wealth building, and those sorts of things take time to figure out what does work, what doesn't work, and just make those changes along the way.
Totally. And kind of going in a different direction for a second, because you've done a few creative things in a different lane on your own journey. You've written a book. We're going to bring it up again. What's the book called again?
It's the ABCs of the Coast Guard. It's a kid's picture book that I made for my daughter about 4 years ago. which, for instance, it just goes over like the Coast Guard. A is Alexander Hamilton. He's the founder of the Coast Guard, who made the Revenue Cutter Service, and goes through all the way through Z of all the different letters. But that was just something that I made, sketched it out, and then hired an illustrator to make some like digital versions of like my chicken scratch of pencil on cut in half sheets of paper. And I was able to kind of go through and figure out all the steps to do to upload it and actually have it. It's a print on demand book that people can get on Amazon now. And actually, it's been just recently, like I'm doing taxes and everything, I got another 1099 royalty check, not royalty, but like a royalties 1099 from Amazon. And the amount has grown each year, and it's working. It's one of those things. It's like, it's passive. It's just out there. Yeah. I'm not actively having to do anything with it, anything more with it at this point. I could potentially be out there advertising it and doing all sorts of things like that. But for me right now, for what it is, it's there.
And you've done it. And
done it.
You got the itch to do something in 5 years or whatever. Now you know.
Yeah. I know at least some of the steps of how you can self-publish on Amazon. And it's not terribly difficult. The KDP thing that they have, I don't know if it's still called KDP, but the way that Amazon can make it so that you can publish your own book is pretty good.
I forgot to do this at the very beginning. I apologize. If people had questions and want to get your advice on anything, because you've been in the crypto space, working in that space a bit, and talking about the Amazon stuff, real estate, you've got some expertise with your own journey. Anything military wise, where can people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter. Generally, is where people can find me. It's at Seeker of Coin on Twitter. So it's the easiest place. I'm also on Instagram, not as much though. I definitely don't have that like photographic eye that Instagram likes to use. So, but generally, people can reach out to me on Twitter. Just send me a message. Or LinkedIn.
LinkedIn as well. Michael Allen, Seeker of Coin. When you look at kind of, the next few years, 18 years, you mentioned 3-year contract, potentially 20 years being that kind of big level to be able to have your retirement. And you look at this kind of journey, right now you've got 3 properties, one that's going to be sold. So post that you'll have 2 properties and, just kind of hypothetically speaking, you fast forward the clock 20 years, properties that are going to be fairly close to being paid off. And let's say you've gone somewhere else. Maybe you have 2 rentals, not more.
It'll probably be more.
Probably more. But like that right there, I mean, being in the military for 20 years, let's say you do 21 years, you're not going to make $1 million in a year, right? Nope. You're not going to be a CEO of a company and make $500,000 in a year or whatever the case may be. However, it doesn't mean you can't do something pretty freaking cool.
No,
and have,
absolutely.
Things set up. Yeah.
We're looking at, we go down to Charleston to South Carolina there. We'll be down there for 3 years. So a 3-year tour down there. Coming back. Retirement is going to be probably a little while after that. I'll probably promote and then do like a high 3 into retirement there. And that'll be when it's time to figure out what I'll do next. And if that's going to be commercial real estate or real estate in general, I do love it. I like being able to acquire properties and provide housing, but also have that like passive income stream. And then the just various like real estate deals that are always out there. It's always very interesting to do. And if I go into commercial real estate or residential real estate or get another job doing something different in a major industry, it all depends. And part of it is having a plan. So, and like I said, I have like 6 more years to be somewhere where I'm having what's going to happen at the end of that plan. But I have a plan in the meantime, and that's, moving to South Carolina, 3 years there, getting some more certifications and looking toward the future on the way out of there.
That's awesome. What kind of goals do you have for this year, 23, by the end of the year?
23, obviously, well, it's every one of these things, every one of these moves is kind of like a goal. That's kind of like a life event as it is. Like not everybody moves every 3 years. So it's kind of like dealing with that. picking up various certifications in emergency management. I'll probably be looking at retirement is going to be activating the GI Bill and going and getting my MBA. So that would be a big goal, kind of like at the end of that. And it's, going to do that to gather, some skills, additional skills, as well as network. I'm definitely going to hopefully go to a brick and mortar school this time as well. Because like I've done my associates and I've done my bachelor's degree, but I've done it all online. So the opportunity to go to an actual brick and mortar and network with people in person is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's such a good point because, man, you and I were kind of in this weird, generational, fringe, what are we, Gen Y, Gen Z? No,
Yeah.
millennials.
Millennials, I think.
Yeah, millennial, Gen Y, I don't know.
Yeah.
Versus Gen X,
Mhm.
So we grew up with the internet, but not like out of the womb.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't like lived on it like they have.
So I always ask this question recently, speaking of networking and meeting people, who is the one person that you want to meet in the military, out of the military, whatever, living, obviously, in the industry, whoever, who's the one person you want to meet?
Oh, geez. I really don't have someone to put on a pedestal like that at this point. I've shoot,
Putting you on the spot.
you did there, yeah. I really don't have anyone like that, and it's mostly just because I don't know. I've met a lot of interesting people, and everyone has their own interesting story. And just because there's someone famous doesn't exactly necessarily mean that like they're someone that you're going to idolize and have to want to meet them. I just like meeting people in general. I'm a very social person and talkative person with other folks. My wife doesn't like that always. So whoever the next interesting person that I meet is, that's who I want to meet.
I love it.
Because everyone's got their own interesting things that they're into.
That's so true. When you look at your journey, what's one thing you learned or one door that's opened that just never even crossed your mind until it happened? Like, oh wow, that just happened.
I was put onto the board of directors for the Military Aviation Museum out in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And it's one of the largest collections of World War I, World War II military aircraft with a significant number that is still fly. And so they do shows and things like that. And I was able to to volunteer to take a position on the board. And I have that through a mutual friend that the museum, it was trying to expand its board, and a good friend that was influential in knowing a lot of the people that are there. It was originally a private collection. He knows the person whose private collection it was, and they're going in kind of a younger direction for that kind of a museum. And so it was really awesome to be able to join a board of people that are generally significantly older than I am, but that gives a great opportunity for me to learn from those people of, what is their expertise, what has been their experience, and what has led them to that point as well.
That's awesome. And you got that because of networking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of what people will achieve in their life is due to networking. And I mean, I'm here today on this because of networking, right? I mean, like our mutual friend, Miguel Torres, like I ended up working for him right before he retired from the Coast Guard. And now he does his own podcast show down in Florida and stuff like that. And, had I not met him, he never would have been able to introduce me to you.
I know,
him and his wife introduced you to my wife and I. Like, yeah, call Joel. He'll hook you up.
Yeah.
So,
and what's so crazy about that, he's got his own podcast, Cannabis and Christianity, which is really cool. He's, I think, 2 or 3 years in on it. And that's where I feel blessed too. Like I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and most of the people are in our industry. It's all local. And I got into a unique thing, doing stuff, kind of building relationships over state lines in different parts of the country. And so like, I've been able to meet them a couple of times. They came into St. Louis through, drove up to visit family in Kansas City, and we went to a Cardinals game a few years back. And then, I got a chance to meet you face to face for the first time.
What, 2 years or last year? Last year. And then, I mean, you just, when you did your, like, did you follow 64 all the way to the East Coast, or did you fly in?
I flew in.
You did fly in, but yeah, I remember
Yeah.
seeing that you were out there like at the end of 64 in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey man, come on, swing by the house.
Got a chance to check out the house.
Go see this house that you helped me buy.
Yeah. And yeah, we went to Pappy's last year.
Oh yeah.
To get some good barbecue here in St. Louis. So yeah, it's just I love the opportunity to meet awesome, cool, interesting people, learn a lot of new things, and continue to build connections and make connections too. So, but yeah, we're running out of time. You have places to go, but thank you so much for making time out of your crazy schedule. And Michael Allen, thanks again.
Absolutely, happy to be here, and I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Cool.